RM Sotheby's is the world's largest collector car auction house by total sales. They are the preeminent market maker of high-quality collector cars and collections, regardless of size or complexity. By working in partnership with the Sotheby's team and its network of 80 offices in 40 countries, RM Sotheby's has established the largest client network of any collector car auction house in the world. Join the RM Sotheby's family by connecting with one of their car specialists at rmsotheby's.com or contact me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. Try that again. Welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. I'm extremely excited today because if you've seen the title, it is Car Culture in Norway. So one of my goals in the podcast is to try to share different car cultures around the world. And if you are in a different country and you like this podcast and you would like to share your car culture with me, please shoot me a note, Greg at the Collector Car Podcast. I would love to hear from you and have you on the podcast. So today we're talking about Norway. So I'd like to welcome Christopher. Christopher, how are you doing?
Oh, thank you, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and I promised you I wouldn't butcher your last name. So please tell us your full name.
My name is Christopher Skjæveland. That's the most English way of saying it. In Norwegian, it would be Skjæveland. It sounds a bit more drab.
Now, if you would, tell us, where are you in Norway, kind of what you do, and then how you found me, honestly.
Well, I'm located down in the southwest of the country of Norway, near the coast. And well, I'm an electrical engineer by day, and as night falls, I don my automotive journalist cape of sorts. I'm a freelance writer for one publication, a Norwegian vintage car or vintage vehicle publication, because we grasp around everything: tractors, lorries, motorcycles, everything.
And so what is that publication? I'd like to put a link in the podcast description.
Yeah, it's called Norsk Motorveteran. I think I'll just send you the link.
Yes, please do.
It's in Norwegian, so it's pretty useless for English. But no, it's fun. I've been doing that for this is my 4th year, so I've been doing it for a while. And it's quite fun. And the way I found you, Greg, is it's just Spotify aligning the stars. You know, I started listening to podcasts 4 or 5 years ago, and the Collector Car Podcast popped up as a suggestion. So I just went along.
You know, it's interesting because I'm just putting this together. So a couple things. My sister lived in Norway for 3 years through the Air Force and based in Oslo. I had a chance to visit there, and I'll throw up some pictures from that visit because when I was there, I was really interested in what cars would you see in Oslo, and absolutely stunning, beautiful country. I mean, you guys seem like you guys have really figured it out. Absolutely loved it. I mean, my niece is 10 years old and she's walking downtown Oslo at 11 p.m. and totally safe. Like it was just a wonderful place. And so what was interesting is I had actually interviewed my brother-in-law, who at the time was an F-16 pilot, for another podcast I did called Learn from Others. I don't do it anymore. But what was interesting is at the time that was put out, he was in Norway. And so behind the US, I had the most listeners in Norway. And so I don't know if that linked to the Collector Car Podcast somehow. So anyways, while we're talking about podcasts, just an announcement. I am doing a second podcast called Full Throttle Talk. So that's another one you can check out with 2 other folks. Paul Kramer is a Porsche expert out of California. And then Tim Harris is an extreme enthusiast. So that, I think we've got 6 episodes out now. So, but thank you for reaching out. You shot me an email and you were kind of talking about a really cool car. So before we get to the kind of the culture in Norway, tell us about your cool car. And I'll flip up some pictures here while we talk about it.
Yeah, sure. Well, my car is it's a 1970 Ford Torino Brougham 4-door hardtop. It's a bit of a mouthful. Now, where do I start? I feel it's kind of a rare but nobody cares kind of car. Because people overlook the 4-door cars, big time. And I've gotten a lot of Uh, I'm not going to say verbal abuse, but there's been some harsh times owning a four-door car. Uh,
Which I think is ridiculous
yeah,
because
me
it's
too.
it's more practical. You can fit your friends in there. The entry level price point is so low. I mean, you can get a '57 Chevy Bel Air four door, for a third of the price of
Oh
a
yeah,
two door coupe, right?
yeah, big time. Yeah, and there were two things about that car that stood out because I fell in love with the 70 Torino as a kid, as an 11-year-old playing video games. I was playing. It's called Test Drive 5. The intro of that is on YouTube. People should look it up because it's actually pretty cool. If you aren't into cars and rock music, you will be by the end of that 1.5 minute video. But during the first frame, there's this short, just a snippet of a second view of this aggressive-looking front end, and it's a Torino GT with hideaway headlights.
Mm.
And it really stuck with me as a kid. But the car wasn't in the game, and I thought it was a Charger, and I sort of forgot about it for many years. And I got heavily into Mopar e-bodies. I was a 70 Challenger fanatic, but I was always priced out of them. Could never really afford them. And it was an advice from my dad who said, just look for something else that you think is cool. And this Torino popped up online. It was in Norway. It had been imported in 2002. And the hideaway headlights didn't work at the time. So I didn't really pay much attention to it. That it was a four-door kind of put me off, I'll be honest to say, shaped by the car culture, I suppose. but I started, looking more into it as the price dropped. And I did some reading, did some investigation, and I found out that the Brougham came standard with hideaway headlights. And that so somehow it flicked a switch in my mind because I was taken aback to this 11-year-old me. And I knew then and there I had to have it. And I sent the guy a deposit and I picked it up, the weekend after. It wasn't really as described. It had some issues, but I got it home. It was an 8-hour drive home, but barely made it through.
8 hours in that car?
Oh, yeah.
Did it break down? Did you do okay?
No, it did okay, but we got a bit of a scare. It was me and a friend of mine. We took the plane over and drove home, but at the first fuel stop, it wouldn't start because the timing was way off. I discovered that later, but it wouldn't start, and nobody wanted to help. But we got it running, and as we got closer to home, the left front wheel bearing made some alarming noises. And as I parked the car, I jacked it up to see how bad it was, and everything just came off in my hand. So it was really lucky that didn't happen on the road. So no, it's a great car, and as you said, the entry level was I paid close to $5,000 for it, because it's the weird thing about the Norwegian market is that the more sought after and expensive cars tend to do poorly here, because the people with that kind of money aren't really into that kind of car. But the cheaper alternatives are a bit pricier. You can get a bit more money for them over here as over there, I suppose. And it's a 351 Cleveland V8. It's a 2-barrel car, but it's been swapped at some time with an Elbrock Performer intake and the 4-barrel. And it's got it was a single exhaust car from new, but it has true duals on. And a couple of years ago, I'm 37 going on 38, but I'm treating this car as I'm 18 because I wasn't allowed a V8 car when I was 18. So I put this I call it a hot rod exhaust or a NASCAR exhaust. The true duals, They go into these chambered mufflers that I got custom made from chambered mufflers or chambered exhaust, I think the company is in the States. The mufflers are called Power Sticks. And I sent this guy, Eric is his name, and I sent him an email. And I said, I have this car, this 70 Torino, and I wanted to sound like a mid-year Corvette with side pipes. Is that possible? Because they are chambered, those side pipes.
Right.
And he effectively said, hold my beer. And a few months later, this package arrived, and I got my power sticks on, and with turn downs just before the rear axle, it sounds amazing. It's a bit obnoxious, but it's what I wanted. It sounds the part.
That is awesome. And for our listeners who are listening audio only, so it does look like a Charger, just a little bit stretched, and it doesn't have the post between the front door and the back door. So unless you look at it, you wouldn't initially think it's a 4-door. So it does have the flowing body of a 2-door, which is really cool. And it looks like you might have some American 5-star wheels on it, possibly.
Yeah, I did, because that was a bit of a, I'm not going to say bargain, but the people that sold me the car, they are still in business. They are a wheel and tire retailer, and they sold me the car. It wasn't really as is. It wasn't MOT'd, even though it should have been. They said it was.
Explain MOT.
MOT, it's this biannual. It's sort of a, what do I say? It's sort of an inspection. You have to do every other year to deem the car road legal. Really, they go over the points and check your brakes, if there are variables in the brakes, if it works properly, if you have any leaks, that sort of thing. It's a technical inspection, really. And they said it had a valid MOT, but it didn't. I should have checked that beforehand, but I didn't. I was blinded. And so I said to them, this car really isn't as described, but I'm willing to look the other way if you can cut me a deal on some wheels and tires. Because the tires were decades old. They were winter tires. They were horrible. It was like driving on ice in the summer. So they sent me a pallet of wheels and tires, and I didn't mention any of it ever again. But after 10 years of having those on, they were showing their age, and I wanted to try some different flavors for the car. So I went back to the stock 14x6 steel wheels with full wheel covers and white line tires.
Now, what is the color? It's kind of a purplish blue. Like, is that not the factory color, or is that custom?
Yeah, it's not the factory color. I kind of wish it was, but it wasn't. Originally, it was pastel blue. This really pale, pale blue. Yeah, but it's almost white. I don't really like the color. I'm not trying to offend people who do. It's not my thing. It was pastel blue with a blue vinyl roof. But in 2009, it was sent to Poland for, let's call it, a very sympathetic restoration, if we can call it that. It's not really good, but anyway. They painted it mystery blue. It's a Seat VW color. And it's really nice because it's like you said, it's a purpley blue kind of color, and it's sort of it's great. It's fantastic.
Now I want to get into the car culture a little bit, but I am curious because I know part of it has to do with the cost of getting classic cars into Norway. So you mentioned you couldn't quite afford a Challenger or Charger, I believe you said.
Yeah.
I imagine. So I have a couple questions here because I know you mentioned it's a massive tax to bring a car into the country. So my first question is that, but also, did you find out why they brought this particular car into the country?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, to start with the last question first, I don't really know. because the guy who I bought it from was a huge collector, an avid collector of many sorts of cars. He wasn't the one who imported it. It had one owner before him, so I'm the third owner, but I have no clue. I've tried reaching out to these previous owners, but I haven't got an answer to why. Really.
Okay. Yep.
So, but the first question, well, for vintage cars, for cars 20 years or older, it used to be 30 years, but we had some clever people in government for a few short years who got some clever things done to allow for a better system. It pays off to have car people in government. So for a car that's 20 years old or older, it's tax exempt. You have to pay a 25% VAT or value added tax on the purchase price, but it's tax free, more or less. But for every other car, you have to pay this ridiculous tax. But it's not as bad as it seems, because when a car reaches 10 years old, you can write off 90% of the tax. It's still going to cost you money. But for a new car, take an example of a new Mustang GT, because that's borderline $65,000 in the US.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah. In Norway, it's 150. It's even before options. Porsche 911s, they start at just under $200,000.
Would the exception be hybrid or electric?
No, they are double taxed. Just to be fair. Oh, yeah. Hybrids have two engines, two motors. They have an electrical motor and a petrol or diesel engine. So they are double taxed. It's contradictory, really.
So this is interesting, because I thought the taxation for Norway would have been extremely in favor of newer electric cars.
It is newer electric, yeah.
Okay, so what is it for electric?
Tax exempt for up to $50,000, and then you pay a percentage. I don't remember what, for everything up to, I think it's up to $100,000, and then you pay full. Yeah.
Okay, so the most feasible car to buy new would be all electric, like Tesla.
Yeah.
Or something to that. Okay, that would explain why I saw so many of them over there.
Oh yeah.
So, if you would talk a little bit about the car culture there, because first off, you sent me an awesome picture of, it looks like a 62 or 63 Chevy Impala that's been literally rolled. I mean, every panel's dented. It's a four-door. They made it look like a cop car. It's slammed. It's got cutouts into the bumper for the exhaust. There's two guys sitting on the car. Even the trunk deck lid is dented and beat. But when I was over there, obviously, like I said, I saw a lot of Teslas, but I also saw a lot of Morgans. I saw a lot of 911s. I saw one or two classic Mustangs of the 60s. But what is the car culture like over there? Are there cars and coffee events? Are there a lot of car shows? Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the car culture in Norway is all over the place, and I'd say it's really good, despite that we have a government that seems hell bent on banning cars altogether. But no, there are lots of cars and coffees, lots of shows. There are big indoor events. There are outdoor events. There are cruise nights. There's a 4th of July marking in it's a city called Lillestrøm. It's quite near to Oslo, where they close off several blocks and have a cruise night all night. It's kind of crazy. So you've got factions, as you get everywhere else, I imagine. You have the BMW guys, the French car fanatics, the Porsche guys or girls, and the American is a tribe all on their own. But for a small country, we're 5.5 million. That's like New York City, or a bit less. But there are, I checked the numbers earlier today. There are about 350,000 enthusiast vehicles registered, and about
Wow.
half of those are vintage cars. And as far as American cars go, the classic Mustangs, 64.5 to 69, have a strong following. Third gen or C3 Corvettes have a strong following. And for some very odd reasons, the Mark 4 and 5 Lincoln Continentals have a strong following. It's a bit of an oddball. So, but we like everything. There's a surprising amount of convertibles in this country, despite we have pretty much bad weather all the time. It's well, especially for us near the coast, we have 200 plus rainy days a year, so it's not really optimal for convertible motoring.
That's what I was going to ask you. How many days a year do you have to actually get out and enjoy these cars? Obviously, in the summer, you could drive them longer because it's the sun doesn't go down, right?
Yeah, and it's not really that bad because well, it depends on where you live in the country. Because up north, your driving season is like from late May to late August. But down in the south and more upwards or eastwards, the cruising season lasts from mid to late March and stretches to early to mid-November. So it's not really that bad.
Oh, that's good. That's what it is here. I just spent an hour pressure washing my driveway to get all the salt and stuff off of it from the snow we've had. But even still, I'm not taking the cars out yet because the roads are still crappy, So I'm waiting for a good rain. Hopefully will happen while I'm gone. So wow, that's amazing. So what is your dream car?
Or next to the Torino.
Yes, if you had all the money in the world and we could pay all the taxes in the world, what would your dream car? Are you a Porsche guy? Are you a BMW guy? Are you American muscle car guy?
Well, muscle cars are near and dear to my heart. There are so many great cars. I'm a huge fan of the Mopar Winged Warriors. I'd really like a '69 Daytona or a '70 Superbird. But they cost more than my house, and I'm not prepared to make that commitment. Not that I could, anyways. But a '70 Challenger TA, second or C2 Corvette, a big block Corvette coupe with side pipes, that would be fun. A '70 Torino GT pace car would be really nice. So, there are lots of great cars, but I'm content and happy with my Torino because I think I saved it from what you described earlier with that Chevy being all beat up.
So what event was that? You call it the Raggerbill?
It's a class of car, really, a Raggerbil. You can call it party wagon, or it's not really a beater, but they beat on it. They party in it, drive around with people sitting on the roof and on the deck lid and everywhere for cruising speeds. Not really legal, but it's Norway, a subculture.
In Norway, people cruise sitting and laying on top of the cars?
Not everyone, but there's a subculture. This raggar thing is a subculture in car culture among the younger generations, and they tend to buy cheap American cars to drive around and party in, and they end up in a sorry state, I have to say.
well, two things real quick. I love the fact that you're you're overseas, and your dream cars, you mentioned American cars, so I thought that was really cool. And then when I was, I think, 16, I was in marching band, and we had to stay after school and do practice. And we would usually walk up or drive up to the local gas station, convenience store to get donuts or whatever. And one of us had the brilliant idea that 8 of us were going to go in one car. So 3 of us sat on the hood. And I totally do not recommend this. And so I sat on the hood as we went to the convenience store. And I was hanging on to the windshield wiper, and I thought, this is a really, really bad idea. And so on the way back, I sat inside. I'm like, I'm not, because this is like a real street. We probably hit 25 miles an hour.
Oh, God.
Anyways, so it's interesting to see people doing that at a much slower pace, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. It's walking pace. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun. We need to bring that to the US. Sit on your classic car and cruise around.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, now you'll share then. What's the name of the magazine again?
Norsk motorveteran, Norwegian
Right.
motor veteran. But I'm going to send you a link.
Yeah, so we can find it. I'll have that on the description here. And Christopher, thanks so much for sharing the Norwegian car culture on the Collector Car podcast.
It's been a joy and a privilege. Thank you so much for having me.